Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hey, Al, good to see you once again.
Once again,
I'm in a
yes.
different room today.
Yeah. Yes. We have we've seen each other a couple times today. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
So,
have. We
so-
have, absolutely. So I'm actually in Hartwell today at our manufacturing plant. We actually had some customers touring through. So that was pretty cool.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
what have you been up to since the last time we all met here on Tuesday Town Hall?
So spent some time in Texas, visiting some different parks and some different customers, and just really continuing the road show. I didn't toss up any LinkedIn footage this week, but still got out there and meeting with customers and just seeing kids play. So a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, we do have a great guest today, and I ended up interviewing a solo interview here, due to a snafu, we'll say.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let me tell you before you go into that. Let me tell you a little story about something that happened while I was in Texas. So
okay,
I don't like to drive in Dallas.
okay,
Worst town ever to drive in, as far as I'm concerned. Too many confusing streets and roads. So I usually just Uber around from place to place. Well, I called an Uber, and the Uber shows up in his Toyota Corolla or something. I don't really care. But there's a bicycle on the back, and I'm like,
okay.
so I opened my door. I was like, dude, I hope I don't have to ride that to my destination. He's like, you never know. Murphy might strike. And I go, Murphy was an optimist, and he looked at me like, what? No, he wasn't. I was like, no, that's the joke. Murphy was an optimist. And he kind of laughed, and I don't think he really understood what I was trying to say. But the fact is that Murphy does strike now and again, and he tended to strike today. So
Yes, he did.
yeah. So we
Uh,
did about a 55-minute interview with Matt,
yeah,
fully unrecorded. So,
yeah,
and Matt, being a good sport, I had to go because I had meetings, the tour to go to, but Al stuck around with Matt, and they recorded a better second version. So round two of a talk on. I believe we can continue to talk about leadership and staff engagement, right?
yeah. We touched on leadership a great deal, and Matt had a lot to offer, being that he started as a young kid, which you'll learn, and has really been in this industry for his entire working life. So it's pretty amazing that the information that he has and just the knowledge that he's acquired over time. So
Yeah, I'm really glad we connected. He, through the power of LinkedIn, again, it's kind of this whole podcast started off on Friday, where our original guests had to reschedule, and so I put out a call for help on LinkedIn. And Matt, who I think they're at episode 139 or 150 or something on their Attraction Pros podcast, said, "Hey, I know how it is. Happy to pitch it and get in there for you." And we had already had his Attraction Pros partner, Josh Liebman, scheduled for this week to be on for next Tuesday. So we'll have back to back, but they discuss different aspects of the family entertainment. So next week's will be different from this week with Matt. So thanks for hanging in there. Stuff happens. No one died. we're going to be good. This is episode 21, I think, which I was doing my math, which, math isn't my strong suit, but that's almost 6 months. We're coming up on 6 months.
Yeah,
so we'll have to do something special.
We started April 14th, and we've been going strong, and it has been super exciting. So thanks to everybody that has tuned in, to every single one. And if you've only tuned into a few, I want to make sure that you like and subscribe our podcast, Tuesday Town Hall, but also go out and like and subscribe Attraction Pros and things like that, because, the more information you have, the better you'll be in the long run. So
we're here to provide resources and help in any way we can. So this is one way we feel like we can help, by bringing in some industry experts.
Absolutely. And we'll put all the contacts down into the description and show notes. So feel free to reach out. We say that a couple of times within the interview, but I guess without further ado, let's.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I know, right?
All right.
All right, guys, here we go. Hi, Matt. How you doing?
I'm great, Al. How are you?
I'm great. Now, Scott unfortunately couldn't join us today. In all honesty, we had a podcast going, and I was so intrigued by the conversation that I didn't hit record. So I apologize for that, but we're going to make sure that we hit all those same points right here. And but yeah, so how are you doing? Things are going well. Where are you based out of, first and foremost?
Sure. I'm in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is right near Asheville. So if anybody's familiar with the western part of North Carolina, that's where I am.
Okay, awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being on Tuesday Town Hall today. And, you have quite an extensive background in the industry of amusement parks and just amusement in general. So kind of share your background a little bit with us. You started at a very young age as an operator, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. Good research in your show notes.
Yeah.
I did. I started as a ride operator at Canobie Lake Park, which is up in New Hampshire. And it was a great experience to kind of start that young. But I spent about 10 years at that park, and I worked my way up through the rides department. I also spent some time in Minnesota at the Mall of America. So I worked for Knott's Camp Snoopy and also Valley Fair out there, part of the Cedar Fair family. And then I went to Connecticut, where I was the GM of a small family entertainment center. So if your listeners know the Getland family, I got to work with Michael Getland very closely, and that was fantastic. But that led to my position at Universal, which was my last quote unquote day job. And really, when I was at Smiles, I noticed that my passions in the industry were changing. So I'd been in frontline management for quite a while, and I noticed that I was really starting to focus more on people management, and I really wanted to get more into that. And so when I found the position at Universal, and I was very lucky that they hired me, I was now the senior trainer of leadership development. So now I was really focusing on developing leaders kind of from the back of house standpoint and helping those leaders do their frontline gigs, obviously, but that really is where that sort of passion came from. And then in 2011, I stepped away from Universal and started my own business called Performance Optimist Consulting. And now what I get to do is work with leaders all over the attractions industry, whether it's a zoo, aquarium, museum, family entertainment center, theme park, amusement park, cultural attraction, really make sure that their leaders have all the tools and resources they need to be effective leaders. So that's what I get to do now.
Awesome. Well, we want to touch on the leadership aspect of everything, but first and foremost, I want to talk about just the industry that we're in. It's similar to the amusement park industry, but it's I would say on a smaller scale because we don't have roller coasters and things of that nature. But I think everybody is impacted the same by what everybody's been going through for the last 6 months, roughly. With the COVID-19 pandemic. So how have you seen this pandemic impact park ownership, park leadership, and things of that nature?
It's interesting. I think in some ways it runs the gamut, right? I mean, I think in some ways people accepted it right away and they said, well, okay, this is what we're going to have to do. A lot of people, of course, were like, we don't know what we have to do. And we're still in that boat in some ways, right? Things kind of change on a daily basis.
Right.
But I think ultimately people have embraced this idea that we're all in this together, and that, what's that phrase, a rising tide raises all boats, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure you can look that up and get it right.
All right.
But essentially that, if we all work together, whether we were competitors or we used to do something different, that is really going to help us move forward in the best possible way, because we are all in this together. And if a family entertainment center can do something and learn something that benefits an amusement park or a zoo or a cultural attraction, then, there's been a lot of sharing across the board. And I think that's been wonderful as we've been going through this, because not only is it good to share the information, it's also good to kind of share where we all are emotionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a huge win, I think, is the networking that's been happening and kind of the mutual support that we've all been kind of showing each other.
Yeah, and I think that one of the best things I've seen come out of all of this is that people are having to think outside of the box. And you were telling us about a story about out in Gatorland, they did something very unique. So will you explain that to folks? And I'll be glad to pop a picture up on screen.
Absolutely. So at Gatorland, they have embraced the fun in our industry, right? And I think that's one of the things that we all need to be focused on is, yes, we have these new safety procedures and safety protocols, but we're still a fun industry, right? We should still be having fun. And so they enacted the skunk ape social distancing character, I guess, if you will, a monster, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But it's a person in a costume, right? A skunk ape costume with a t-shirt. It says social distancing, I think, and then it's got an aerosol can and a rag, and it runs around the park, in a very fun way, in a very engaging way, reminding people to stay socially distanced. So imagine, Al, if you're at the park and you see a sign, you see a little sticker on the ground.
Yeah.
Are you going to listen to that? Are you going to abide by that? Or are you going to abide by this 6-foot character that's coming at you with a can of aerosol?
From the look of the 6-foot character, I'm going to listen to the 6-foot character because I mean, as you all can see at home, and if you're just listening, skunk ape looks like Sasquatch, but a little more deranged. So it's pretty funny. Yeah. And I like the t-shirt or the tank top that he's wearing. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, in our industry, people, I think like every single business at first was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I have to shut my doors, things of that nature. But as we all know, good leadership finds a way. And I think that a lot of people have had to learn exactly what type of leader they are through all of this. And I think that even some leaders had to have a little leadership during all of this. And I know one thing I like to talk about is, Richard Branson always talks about take care of your employees and they'll take care of your business. How much truth do you find in that statement?
Only about 10,000% true.
Wow, that's low. That's low on the percentage scale. Yeah,
I wholeheartedly agree that if you take care of your team members, if you take care of your staff, then they're going to take care of your guests. And I've seen so many leaders that, for whatever reason, maybe they're really concerned about their bottom line, or the bank loan, or whatever it is, making payroll, that they forget that these are human beings that we have to take care of. And this doesn't matter what size organization you're talking about. I mean, Virgin is a huge organization, all the way down to, a bowling alley with 4 employees, right? You've got to take care of those human beings that are working for you. Because ultimately, and I know this is something you talk about, is from a marketing standpoint, they're the ones that create the experience that then create the word of mouth marketing and advertising, right? So it only makes sense to look at those folks as that's your marketing team, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you have people that are putting together your creative and you're doing the social media and that kind of thing, but your team members are not only your marketing team, but they're obviously your operational team, and they're your guest service team, and they're the people that really make it happen. So yeah, absolutely. I agree that if you're not taking care of your team members, then they're probably not going to take care of your guests nearly as well as you'd like them to.
Yeah, and smaller businesses usually have a very tight, if any, marketing budget whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about it. I mean, you're wanting, that teenage crowd is willing to spend money there, or willing to spend their parents' money there, whichever way. And you've got roughly teenage crowd working there, so they're going to be your best advertising. You got walking billboards going for mm-hmm. you, and you don't want to treat them as such. But what you want to do is make sure that they love their job and love that they have responsibility and things like that so much that it's almost infectious, where people are jealous that they have that job. Like, oh man, that's the job to have in town. And that's how you will have people just knocking down your door to come in. Like, what is the magic in this place? I mean, Chick-fil-A, sure, they have great chicken sandwiches if that's your thing. But is it the best thing I've ever eaten in my whole life? No. But people go because they know they won't be hassled. They know they won't get scoffed at or anything like that. So same thing with Disney and many other businesses. So I highly suggest people go out and just research that aspect of word of mouth marketing, because, social media can only do so much, but social media can hurt you if you have a bad review. And you want to try to prevent that, because 1,000 good reviews can be squashed by one bad review. So we want to make sure we get away from that. Now, in this time, everybody's talked about cleaning, and everybody's talked about just kind of going through. There was an evolution of how do we clean. Well, we had the foam pit situation where people were nervous about how do I clean my foam pit? It's such a hard thing to clean. And some people even went to drastic measures as to close their foam pit attractions to show the public, hey, we're taking every precautionary measure. Even if it hurts us and our bottom line, we're going to take our precautionary measures. But at the end of the day, we also made a cover that you can put over your foam pits. So have you seen that people are taking whatever measure possible? And if so, I know we have the, what do they call it? Skunk ape. I was going to call him skunk squash. Skunk ape. We have that, but I mean, have you seen any other drastic measures or anything that people are doing to really show that, hey, we're taking all the measures and you can come to our park?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that comes to mind is there's a children's museum in Omaha, the Omaha Children's Museum, and they had a parade that was scheduled before COVID, I believe. And they kind of changed around the way the parade worked. So it wasn't, people, gathered on the sides. It wasn't the guests gathered on the side of the road watching people go by. So instead they had their employees physically distanced on the side of the road, and then people drove by in their own cars. So, right, they're keeping people safe that way, but they're also on all of their characters, whether they were a face character or the character had a big mask on, a character mask, they had a mask on, right? So they were showing that they were taking that very, very seriously. And at the time, the museum wasn't even open. Right. So they were now communicating to their guests, this is how seriously we take this. We've completely revamped this entire parade. We have put masks on our big characters. So this is how safe this is how seriously we're taking it. So you can be assured that when we do reopen, that we're going to be just as safe as possible. So I think there's a lot of proactive measures that people can take and ways to show that. Whether it's signage, or whether it's the skunk ape, or whether it's, physically doing something to show that example. I think that's what helps people feel safe, that they can come back.
So whatever it takes to show people, even before they get to the park or the facility, whatever you can do to show them that you are taking every precautionary measure would be great. And whether that be, like you said, signage, social media, or videos on YouTube, or whatever you can do, you've got to give them that peace of mind, because some people are scared. Some people are a little less scared. Some people a little more scared. And so we just got to give peace of mind and show them that, hey, if something does happen, we're going to take care of that too, and this, that, and other. So you want to make sure you do that. But I mean, not only for your customer, but for your park employees as well. I mean, you want to make sure that they know coming to work is not going to be something they have to fear, because again, if they're afraid, they're going to act afraid, and they're going to portray that fear to everybody that comes in your park. So I totally agree with you 100%. And also it goes back to give people more responsibility, your employees and things of that nature. And I think that they will feel that they are a part of something bigger, and that'd be even better for them. So, but we were talking about using social media, and I know Scott has really pushed the gambit on LinkedIn this entire off season, if you want to call it. And I mean, he's really connected with a lot of people, and he really advocates LinkedIn, and he's connected with yourself and others, and just want to see how you feel about getting out there and becoming a part of a group, or a part of, kind of, instead of being in an echo chamber of people that just say what you want to hear. How good is it to be out there and be with ideal, like people that make ideas, ideation, things like that, and other platforms, LinkedIn being the main one, I would say, for business?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to not be in an echo chamber, right? To seek out other ways of inspiration or other information that you can use to help your business. And I've heard this, a number of times where people will say, if you're going someplace and you're going to get a magazine, you're going to go look at a website, go look at something that has nothing to do with your industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you pick up a magazine that's not amusement related, you can find like out of the box ideas in there that you would have never thought of if you were talking to other great people in the attractions industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at these other businesses or other entities and say, what can I learn from that? But I also think, getting back to LinkedIn, that it's only as valuable as the time that you're putting into it. And I'm not advocating to spend all day on LinkedIn, not at all.
Right.
But if you're on there, make the most of your time. Don't just scroll through, right? And look at things. While that can be valuable, the more you engage, the more valuable it becomes. And certainly we'd all rather be together, at a networking event or something like that. At least most of us would. I know there's some introverts that would say, no, I'm fine doing it this way. But the more that you can engage, the more that you can either post a question or post something you're passionate about, the more that you can, develop relationships with people and have the kind of relationship where you can reach out to someone when you do have a question or you do have an issue. And again, that's one of the things I think is great about this industry is that we've already established sort of an attitude of sharing, even before COVID, right? I think we shared a lot, unless it was something that was, IP related or something that was so, germane to our business that we couldn't share it from a privacy standpoint. But, there's no privacy when it comes to safety, right? We're all sharing safety information. So many people are sharing like marketing ideas and guest service ideas and things like that, all that sharing, it has to start somewhere, right? You don't just share that with a perfect stranger. You share that with people you have relationships with. So, being on LinkedIn or whatever profile or whatever platform you find is where your audience is, you only get out of it what you put into it, I guess is the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's kind of the genesis of Tuesday Town Hall. We started this out as a webinar series, and it wasn't even a webinar series. It was really just, hey, look, everybody's a little bit nervous, or a lot scared, and just everybody join up. And it doesn't matter if you're our customer or not, just come on and we're all going to share ideas and we're going to get through this together. And it turned out to be something great. So, I mean, the evolution of that got to where we have guests on. I mean, we had guests on from the beginning, but it was a live audience, format to where people could chime in and ask questions. And I would say that a lot of the answers that we got during this as a company, we got from just people chiming in and saying, hey, forcing us to think about certain things. They would ask a question and it would be a smaller question sometimes, it'd be a larger question other times. And we would have to think about it. And it would force us to think. It would force us to look at it from a different angle. And that really made us nimble. And I appreciate that completely. So to everybody that has been a part of Tuesday Town Hall, thank you so much for helping us, because if we had just stayed in our office or stayed on Zoom calls with each other, it would have been a totally different outcome. So I truly think that meeting up and hanging out and just shooting ideas across to one another is a great way of doing it. So I know that you have your own podcast. Will you tell us a little background of that podcast?
Absolutely. So the podcast is called the Attraction Pros Podcast, and it's really on the kind of the leadership and business side of the industry. So there's a lot of fan podcasts out there that talk about their trip reports and things like that. And while my co-host Josh Liebman and I, we're both fans of the industry as well, and we absolutely nerd out talking about roller coasters and attractions and haunted houses and things like that. The main focus is really for attraction professionals or attraction pros to get tips, tools, and inspiration so that they can be even better at what they do. So they can get new ideas. They can get different ideas. And, we've had Michael Browning from Urban Air. We've had Jeffrey Siebert from from Six Flags. We've had Jim Shea from Premier. We've had marketing people on there. We've had people like, like Jim, like from the manufacturing side. We've had, people from trampoline parks and, large theme parks and, and zoos and aquariums. And so it really runs the gamut in terms of who we've had on there. And I think one of the benefits is what you were just talking about, where, you've got somebody that's an aquarium leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you may run a family entertainment center, but they're probably doing things or, can generate ideas that would help you in your family entertainment center. So it doesn't necessarily matter where they're from. But we started it really like end of 2017, really just as a way, again, to kind of share our passion, to share the things that we love, and really just to kind of provide a resource for the industry. And it's grown. We're now in our 156th episode. I think
Nice.
we're gonna go tomorrow, or 57th. It's been a great ride, to use that vernacular, but it's really been wonderful to see how, again, people love to share and they like to talk about what's going on and how that's helped other people. So we do have the podcast that's available, attractionpros.com, or on iTunes and Spotify, but we also share articles and, different interviews and things like that, again, we just want to be a resource for the industry.
And speaking of those resources, you also wrote a book yourself that kind of points in that direction, and it has quite the title. What's the title of that book?
Sure. It's called All Clear, a practical guide for first-time leaders and the people who support them.
And if you can't write that down, don't worry. We have a link in the description of both the podcast and the book, and websites and everything. So don't worry about it.
Thank you. Yeah. So the book is really about moving into a leadership role. That's one of the gaps that I found in our industry. Again, whether it's a family entertainment center or a large theme park, is, getting people ready to go from an individual contributor into a role now where they're overseeing other people and they're getting results through others. And in many, many cases, they're overseeing their friends, which can be a huge pitfall, right? So really the book is about, okay, how do we make this transition effectively? And what are those things that we need to know? And how does our mindset have to change over time in order for us to be an effective leader, not just an individual contributor? But it's really also written for two audiences. That's kind of why that title is so long, because I wanted to write it for the people who were going through the process, but I also wanted to write it for the people who were leading the people through that process. So the leader of leaders, if you will. Right. Because what I also noticed is that a big part of the reason that leaders weren't being developed is because the people that were doing the developing didn't really know how to do that. And that's, not really through fault of their own. It's just that that's kind of how they were brought up. So they were doing what they knew, but it wasn't necessarily most effective to, their end goal of, creating another great leader in their organization. So that's why it's for those two specific audiences.
Well, that's great. Well, I know that our industry is ever evolving, as we spoke about, and we have a lot of people out there. We talk about leadership a lot, and you really focus on that as well. And one story that pops in my head is our own Nate Flock was at a park. He's our safety guru. He goes out and trains and whatnot, and there's a little tension in the air and things like that with younger employees, and they were just a little nervous, whatever emotion was going through them. But you could just tell, like he could tell from the night before where he secret shopped and the park, and he came in to train, and he pushed them out there and said, "Y'all go play, have some fun, shake out the fear or anxiety or whatever." So the fact that we're in an industry where fun is kind of at the top of it, how important do you think that as a leader it is to show that you can have fun through the process of learning and through the process of just kind of getting your feet wet?
I think it's incredibly important. And, always used to say when I was an operational manager, if we're not having fun, there's something wrong.
Okay.
Right. And if we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong, right? As a leader. So because we're in this fun industry, we should be the ones setting the stage and being a role model for what kind of fun we can have, whether it's with our guests or our other team members. Now, of course, there's a limit, right? You don't want to be, going out and partying with your team members, because that really blurs the line of leadership. But certainly showing people how it's okay to have fun at work. And I think that Nate story about him saying, hey, we're a little tense right now, let's just go play, right? And we've got all these great things to play with, right? We've got games, and we've got laser tag, and we've got trampolines, and we've got roller coasters. And if we can't find a way to have fun, then again, I think we're doing something wrong. But that also gets back to, kind of the learning environment and what it takes to develop people. And, I really base everything I do on sort of three things, and it's know, K-N-O-W. So what information do they need to know, which that's critically important from a leadership or a training perspective. But the next one is feel. So what are those emotions that we want them to feel, or what can we kind of inspire them to feel while they're going through that? And then the do, which is what are those actions we need them to take, right? Mm-hmm. And I think typically as leaders and trainers, we do a pretty good job with know. So when you go ask somebody, what are your procedures? What are your prices? People kind of know that, right? They get the information part. And then the actions, as far as, watching the trampoline, participants, or, ringing up a sale, they can do that part pretty well. But I think where we don't spend enough time or emphasis is on the feel, the emotional part. And so how do people feel when they're going through this training? If they're feeling overwhelmed, then they're not learning. If they're feeling confident, right? If you're doing things that help them build their confidence, then they're much more likely to perform those behaviors once they're out in the field with the guests than if they were feeling overwhelmed, or they were feeling not supported, or they're feeling bored, right? If people are bored during a training, then they're not going to perform again out in the field. So, that feel portion is really, really critical. And I think a lot of that comes from the attitude of the leaders. Are we focusing really on the team member, or are we focusing on getting through all the material? Right. And
right.
Those are very different ways to approach the training. Is it a checklist, or are we actually making sure that person has learned something?
Yeah. And I mean, I think, we've already spoken about, word of mouth and things of that nature. I mean, like you said earlier, they are the best marketers. So you want to make sure they know everything, because if somebody comes up and asks them a question, it could be something simple like, can I have a drink out here in this area or whatever? And they might not know because they didn't listen, or because they were scared, or whatever the case may be. Right. It's going to look pretty bad if somebody comes up and says, dude, what are you doing with a drink? So, yeah, so you just want to make sure that you aren't just checking off a list. You want to make sure, but not just for small things like that, but for safety, for crying out loud. Safety is number one in everything that we do. So you want to make sure that you really have your act together, and that you allow other people to have their act together, all of your employees and things of that nature. And maybe even get out there yourself and train with them, so that they see that, hey, this person doesn't need to be out here, but they're learning it. So maybe I should learn it too. How do you feel about that? Like the owner operator gets out there and, gets in the mud with people, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that too, because it goes right back to not being in an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
Because that's another way that as a leader, you can get your eyes opened, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see what's going on. And, I'll share a quick story with you. There's a new Facebook group about one of the places I used to work. And it's all these, employees that were there 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was. And they're sharing all these things that went on. And I'm reading it because I was a manager there. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to read that my employees were doing that I had no idea about, right? So I'm nervously reading through the posts. Nothing too bad so far. But I think it's a great way to not only show your team members that you're willing to do that work, that you're open and transparent enough to say, I still have things to learn, but also that you can kind of be the role model of how to learn, or you can be the role model of how you want people to act when they're doing that. So I think the benefits are multifaceted, when it comes to why they should be out there doing that. I also believe that leadership is a journey, that we're never done. with, right? So wherever you are on your leadership journey, if you're a first-time team lead, if you're a director, if you're a CEO, there's always something to learn. There's always something to develop in your own skill set or your own mindset or your attitude. So getting out there and seeing what your team members are doing, and again, being able to be the role model for how you want them to act, I think that's really important.
I think that's great. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that we're talking a lot about anxiety and fear of the employees, but I want to also make sure that we understand that some of these owner operators are a little fearful as well. And that's why we have things like your podcast and this podcast. We want to make sure that we put resources out there so that you don't feel like you're just kind of left in the dark, because everybody comes to you for answers, but where are you going to go for answers? You know what I mean? And so that's why we build resources like this. So feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll have all of our contacts, including Scott, down in the show notes. I'm sorry, I couldn't even think of show notes. We'll have it down in the show notes, and we'll make sure that you get all of your answers to all of your questions. That's what this is for. So don't feel like you're left in the dark. Don't feel like you're left alone. So is there anything else that you might want to kind of point out, that you might want to drive home for anybody, whether they be a park owner, operator, maybe even an employee that might be listening to this?
Well, I would actually just go back to something you were just talking about, where it's not just about the employees, it is about the leaders as well. And, we have to remember that we're all human beings, right? And we all learn in somewhat different ways, but in some ways we all learn the same, because we have to experience things and we have to, internalize things. And the other thing is that, we all kind of have the same wants and needs. It doesn't matter, kind of where you are on the generational spectrum. In our previous conversation, and I'll say it again now, I really hate the generational labels, but everybody wants to be loved. Everyone wants to have a purpose. And so as a leader, if you can tap into that, no matter what that looks like now, even if it looks different than it did 30 years ago or 5 years ago, that's a big part of what we do as leaders. And, really, again, focusing on the human part of the role. Like I said, at one point in my career, I really transitioned to human resources. And sometimes we forget that human is a part of that, right? So it's not just about the resource. It's not just about what that person is doing, the result, but there's an actual human being there. And, as leaders, as employees, as guests, we are still all human beings. And at the end of the day, as leaders, we need to treat people as individuals and as human beings, but we also need to find those resources, like you were just saying, that help us be, effective human beings. And whether that's a family support group, whether that's a group that you find on LinkedIn, whether it's a group of friends that you can get together with, helping you get those answers, or just be an effective human being, then, just remember that, you have to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. It's like being on a plane. I know many of us haven't been on a plane for a while, but, you put your mask on before you help other people.
I agree. And I think that we were talking about earlier, showing everybody audience wise that, hey, we're taking every precautionary measure possible. But I think you should also make sure that you show your staff that you're taking every precautionary measure possible, not only in the COVID sense of that, but as far as just for you to come to work and to have everything you need, and for you to have a good experience. And you got to think about it. These are a lot of younger people. This is their first job for a lot of people, maybe not all, but a lot of people. And what you do as a leader in this job sets them up for how they're going to react in the future to a boss asking them for something. Are they going to be scared? Are they going to be like, okay, I have an opportunity here. I know how to lead here. I know how to insert my opinion here. And you never know. You might have the next, Elon Musk in your audience. I went to one park in particular, and a kid that was working there already has a professional soccer contract. I'm talking about big time contract, not scholarship, but contract with a professional European team, mind you. I can't remember exactly which team. This kid was probably 17 years old, and his parents wanted him to go out there and have a real job before he went off and became, famous or whatever have everything handed to him because he's going to have a pretty hefty contract. And he was having a blast. I mean, he was learning. He was one of the most receptive people, very humble, things of that nature. So if he can be humble, if he can come to work and have excitement and things like that, I think most people really can. So I think that there's a little more responsibility, like you're talking about, than just, hey, go over there and pick that up, or go over there and tell them that, or this, that, the other. You actually have a chance to change somebody's whole entire outlook on work experience for the rest of their life. So I think that if we do that, we'll, everything will kind of fall in place if we're really good at this. How do you feel? Does that resonate with anything that you believe?
Oh, absolutely. Because I remember lessons that I learned from my very first job, working at Canopy Lake Park as a ride operator, that I still enact today, things about guest service, or things about, working with a team, or, it probably doesn't hurt that one of my really good friends was my very first group leader there, and we get together every year and go on this kind of roller coaster adventure, and we get to relive some of those memories. But, a lot of those lessons are really, really ingrained in us as we go forward. And, as you talk about, a leader's influence, not just in that job, but in life, I think that's right on point, because you're teaching people how to be a good employee, right? And while that may seem like it's kind of frustrating, like I have to teach somebody, how to, good work ethic, and, how to sweep a floor and things like that. But yes, that's our job now, right? And so we embrace it. So I think that's a big part of it. I also want to go back to something you were talking about in terms of making the staff feel safe. I think right now, especially, we're seeing a time when our staff might be getting abused more than normal by our guests, right?
Valid.
Yeah, about masks or social distancing or whatever. And, goodness, these kids are doing the best they can in 99% of the cases to just follow the rules and help other people follow the rules. And then, people are getting upset and, lashing out at them. And I think in order to help them feel safe, that we as employers have to fiercely protect our team members in those situations, right? And to me, it's like the mama bear and her cubs, right? That mama bear will do anything to protect her cubs. And, I think the same has to be true of our management teams, right? If somebody comes into your center and they're abusing your team member, in my opinion, granted, I'm not looking at the bottom line, they should be out. There's no excuse for that, right? And I know you may be looking at, well, they were going to spend money in here, now we're losing revenue, but we have to prioritize our team members' safety, and how they feel about coming to work over that person's, that one family's revenue for that day, right? That's my belief, because if you show that team member that you don't protect them and it's okay for that guest to come in and stay, then guess who's not coming back tomorrow? Not that guest. They weren't coming back tomorrow anyway, because they're, they may only be there once, in a month or whatever. That team member's not coming back, right? And if they are, they're not going to be enforcing your rules. They're not going
to be there mentally.
Exactly. Yeah. They're going to quit, but they're still going to be there, right? They're going to mentally quit. So
they're going to take your money, but that's about it. Yeah.
So I think that goes back to the, just fiercely protecting them and making them feel safe.
Yeah. And that has nothing to do. I know this is something that you feel strongly about. That has nothing to do with being a certain generation. Right. That has more to do with being a human being. And I've heard you say that putting a generational tag on people is not the greatest thing, because at the end of the day, we're all individuals. And please clean that up for me if I said that incorrectly. But I think that we do need to see everybody as an individual. I personally, now calm down, everybody. I'm an Alabama football fan. Calm down. And I like Nick Saban. So again, calm down. Stop screaming at your this podcast or your radio or whatever. But Nick Saban uses a lot of sports psychology in everything that he does. And every single player that he talks to them differently. He says everybody receives a message differently. Some people need to be scolded in order for it to sink in. Some people need to be kind of, pampered a little bit, not pampered, but you know what I mean? Just like softly spoken to, encouraged and things like that. That's a way better way to put it. But I personally think that, to your point, we need to really think outside the box and really address everybody as an individual and get to know them. Now, there are tons of personality tests that you can give people, and I know a lot of companies that do that up front, so that they can have like a binder on people and make sure that they are communicating with them the right way, or they are, making sure things of that nature. Now, sometimes that's not available, but it's just amazing at the resources that we have nowadays, to where we can have, sadly, we can have analytics on people nowadays. So you can communicate. And I think if you find that, then you can learn that a little bit about yourself in the process. You can learn like, okay, this particular measure makes me impatient. You know what I mean? As a leader, I really find it annoying when people are late to work or whatever the case may be. But maybe you can teach yourself through that. Maybe I need to act differently. Maybe I don't need to yell at somebody. Maybe they react better and things of that nature. So as a leader, and you're looking at this through the perspective of, you started out as a person learning, and now you are the one teaching, like you were saying earlier. So how do you feel about addressing everybody as an individual, and also taking away lessons for yourself with every interaction?
I think it's something that a leader should be doing in terms of, again, not being closed-minded, right? And I think that's kind of the echo chamber attitude, right? Is that I just want to hear what people agree with me about, right? So it really is looking at how you can continue to learn. And, I think, again, along that journey, we have to be open-minded so that we can take in that information, right? So I think that is critically important.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I know that you have a busy schedule. I want to make sure that we keep you on that schedule. But I do want to thank you for coming on Tuesday Town Hall, and I want to give you this next couple minutes to say or point out anything that you might want to point out. Again, we're going to put all of your links in the description, in the show notes as well, and to make sure everybody is able to click through. But is there anything else that you might think that everybody needs to know, or that you want them to know?
Well, I think just kind of encapsulating a lot of this conversation, it is about human beings, right? It's about focusing on individuals. It's about, treating people with, utmost respect. And if that means speaking to someone that's a little different than you, in a different way than you might necessarily appreciate, then that's okay, right? That's what we do as leaders. We have to learn how to do that as leaders. So I would just say, kind of keep that in mind. I would also put out there for any of your listeners, you mentioned earlier about reaching out for assistance. I would say absolutely, feel free to reach out to me as well. You can put in the show notes, you can put my phone number, my email address. I'm happy to connect with anybody that wants to just to kind of talk or brainstorm. At the beginning of the pandemic, I started something that I just kind of called listening meetings. Because I knew people needed to listen, and people would sign up for 30-minute calls and just, I could just listen, and, people could get things off their chest. I'm more than happy to do that for anybody that might just need, a listening ear, or, somebody to kind of give them a different perspective. And whether you follow my perspective or not, that's okay. Right. I mean, that's why we do this. So feel free to share any of that information in the show notes, and I'm happy to be a resource for anybody. And again, if you want, more resources like that, attractionpros.com, or also performanceoptimist.com is where you can find me.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. It sounds like you've added counselor to your resume. I think that we all could use some good counseling, so I might sign up for one of those. But everybody, feel free to reach out to all of us. We can't really push that point home. We're here for you, all of us, including Scott. So please don't hesitate. We'll be glad to help you out however we possibly can. Please make sure that you tune in to Attraction Pros podcast, and make sure you tune in to Tuesday Town Hall every week. Like and subscribe both podcasts so you don't miss an episode. We try to bring you the most information that we possibly can. And if you or someone you think they might be a good guest on Tuesday Town Hall, please reach out to myself or Scott. We'll be glad to reach out and just talk about that. So thanks to everybody. Thank you, Matt. And thanks, Scott, for showing up earlier. But thank you, everybody. And we'll see you on the next Tuesday Town Hall.